Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Rams Review Podcast. Corey, along with you today. It's a brand new episode, obviously. That's why we've got a new episode out. But we're going to be talking about a rumor that's kind of come to the forefront over the last couple of days when I guess he's the transfer guru these days. Fabrizio Romano tweeted out that Derby were interested and reportedly close to signing Patrick Agyemang from Charlotte FC in MLS. Agyemang is a United States international. I think he has 5 or 6 caps for America. He's currently away on the Gold Cup with the States as well. So, me being American, Patrick Agyemang being American, there's only 2 guys I was going to get. That's Nick Finelli from the Charlotte FC podcast and Andrew Barnacle from the Designated Players podcast. Andrew, you've been on before. Nick, Andrew, welcome to the show. It's great to see you guys.
Yeah, happy to be here, man. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Andrew, I want to start with you because you study all this stuff, and we've spoke before, so you kind of know the level of Derby and the kind of players that sometimes we bring to MLS. And you've seen a lot of MLS players come to Europe and everything like that. What do you make of this news that Patrick Agyemang is potentially on his way to Derby? I've heard reports that the fee is around $7 million US, which is about £4.5 million. I heard that potentially Charlotte denied Derby the opportunity to give the player a medical, which I'm not sure how accurate that is, being as he's away on international duty. But what do you make of the news of Patrick Agyemang potentially going to Derby and to the championship?
It is such a I'm going to use the term interesting, right? So we were really, really high on our show on big. We call him Big Pat. On Big Pat's season this year, we thought with the players around him, bringing Pep Biel back as his playmaker with Zaha on one side, and I mean, you put anybody else on the other side, and put him in transition, and he was going to be dominant, and he has been very, very good, but for whatever reason, the feeling, and whether he plays for the national team or for Charlotte, feels like it's just a little bit more underwhelming than anything, at least from a neutral point of view. And I don't believe it's necessarily fair, but I think his expectations for us were so high that it does feel like he might be dropping a little bit. So when they slap an $8 million tag on him, it's like, that's kind of interesting to me. Now, his play style definitely has the ceiling, again, from an outsider, and I'll let Nick share on his week-to-week basis, but from an outsider, you can see the potential, and if you watch him in the national team, he gets an absurd amount of hate for not a lot of reasons in my personal opinion. Now, is he a starting number 9 for the national team? I don't know if that's it, but what he brings is something that no other striker, and very few strikers in the game currently, at least at the MLS level, bring, and that's physicality that the majority of center backs can't deal with. Right? You watch him, and he is just a handful, and he's a monster, and he makes things happen just by being so big and physical that gives the world of potential. And especially going over to England where that sort of system flourishes, especially at where Derby will be competing next season. I definitely think that this could be a very good move for him, and I have a lot of excitement for that.
And Nick, I'm going to come to you in a moment, but it's important to note here, Andrew, exactly what you pointed out there for our audience in the United Kingdom and around the world who might not be so well read into the United States national team. You could sit there and say, well, of course, he's a good player. He's starting for a national team in a major competition, although the Gold Cup, some of the teams are kind of wonky and whatever. But it's important in the context, isn't it, Andrew, with the amount of players that America do not have currently at the Gold Cup with, I believe it's 7 to 8 that probably would be either starters or make that squad of 23 for the next World Cup next summer. There are forward players, there are players that are sitting out. And so Agyemang's getting those starts. I think I read a statistic. He has played in every national team game so far this season. He's the only player to have done that for the team. But it's important for the context that, when we're talking about, is he a starting number 9 for the national team as well, isn't it, Andrew, that there are players missing from this squad as well.
Sure, but what I'll add on to that is there are 2 positions in the men's national team for the United States that have not been locked down heading into the World Cup. That's at the center back position next to Chris Richards, whoever that second center back is going to be. And that's the number 9 position, who we haven't had a solid number 9 for 6 years, 7 years since Josie left. I mean, how many more people do we need to put up there? And I know we keep getting the calls with Josh Sargent, somebody you probably have kept an eye on closely in the championship, who has not scored in 20 something appearances for the national team, something like that. I mean, it's always because he plays in England, he needs to be better than Pat. But what I have thought about this, and I've gone back and forth on it, because I know that he put in poor performances in this Gold Cup so far. There are moments that his technical ability has let him down a little bit, but I would say I would take him to the World Cup strictly for the fact that when we get our backs put up against the wall, his physicality and his ability to win balls against center backs just with his body and his strength and his hold-up play is something very few strikers in our national team pool bring right now. So I don't see this as a maybe a starter at the World Cup or a starter for this national team, but I do believe he's very close to be in that conversation for sure.
Very much Josie Altidore 2.0. In
That
the
is exactly
very,
what
very,
that is when I
inconsistent.
look at him, that's exactly when I first watched him play, I go, this is, if this guy grows into his game, this is Josie Altidore regen. And I've said that since the day I watched him start playing for Charlotte. I go, this is just Josie Altidore 15 years younger. He has got all the tools if he just puts it all together.
Nick,
Yeah, definitely.
Similar sentiments to Andrew on Patrick.
Yeah, I feel a lot of that's the same. And definitely like with players out in the national team, he's getting his opportunity, but he actually got his start in Charlotte as kind of the super sub. He came on as one of his first matches and scored on a header in the 89th minute. But he was a beast when he came on as a sub, and it was just like you could see exactly what was Andrew was saying. It's just the physicality and having to handle him in those tight spaces, in those areas where it's dangerous and you can't make a mistake. And he's able to do that. But as far as, being the Josie Altidore, being that hold up player, he has gotten better at that and being able to manage that. They've had to put more and more players on him all game. And if you have to battle Patrick Agyemang for 90 minutes, that's tough. But if you are drained after an entire game, and then he gets put in at the end, and now you have to deal exactly with his physicality and his deceptive speed. I think a lot of people think because he's so tall, it's like 6'4", that he doesn't have speed, but he is quick off the turn. I feel like he's got a good quick first step. He's learning how to use his body better, and he does play well two spaces. So the times that you've seen the goals, I think, in either in the national team or with Charlotte, he has run or created that space so that if someone just lays the ball there, he can not only outrun it, but then get the angle and make sure he can put it. And he can finish at those. Where I think his weaknesses is definitely in the final third, the tight spaces. And I think that's where it gets crowded when you have World Cup play, because the defending is better. The chances are very tiny and small and minute, and he needs to improve on that and improve maybe on his creativity and his headers. But as a player in general, he is probably, you'll hear, one of the most learnable, coachable type of players out there. So I know Andrew talked about his raw abilities. It's because he is this, he's kind of come late to the game here. He hasn't been brought up. He went through several different schools and went through the college route. But I feel like his work ethic and his just love for learning and wanting to grow more makes him that much better. And if he's put in situations where he has to be better, he seems to step up. Now, I want to talk about this season with Andrew, maybe saying that he has not been that force. And I think just the whole Charlotte team has not had that. And I think that's not just on Patrick. I think it's just where those creation moments have happened. And he has not finished in some places. So he hasn't been as consistent as we would like for someone who's now like the man, the starter. So that's what I would like to say about him right now.
Yeah, when I look at his highlight tape, and it's very easy, isn't it, Andrew, to look at a player and say, oh, this guy looks good based off of like an 8-minute YouTube video. I mean, I'm sure I could put some highlights of me together, and no, actually that wouldn't work. But he could, yeah, it just wouldn't work. But you can really get any player, can't you, Andrew, and make them look good in these kind of things. But what I was trying to study when I was looking at Agyemang's kind of these highlights and his goal scoring thing is he does have those physical attributes. He is very tall. I think what Nick said there, he is deceptively quick. He looks very raw to me as well. He looks very much like there's a player, but he's not the finished article. Obviously, he's still learning at 24. He is a little bit raw, which does kind of concern me for the $4.5 million outlay that Derby are doing. And again, Nick, you were talking about Charlotte and having a poor season. I read an article just this week where Dean Smith said that Charlotte would be a top 10 championship side. So if that's poor, then that would be good for Derby if he could go into that situation. Andrew, the way Agyemang plays, both for the national team and then obviously for Charlotte, is he playing as a singularly like a 9, or does he as a lone striker, or does he have a partner with him in that situation? How do you get the best out of him as the player? Is he a solo guy? Does he need a 2? Does he need someone in behind? Like how do you get the best out of him?
Yeah, sure. I'll speak to the national team here, and I'll let Nick take in his team. But for the national team, he plays solo. He plays up there alone, with players around him that usually the national team setup is a bit weird right now, where they're doing this thing where they are getting the left fullback as high up the field as they can, tucking the left winger inside, and then trying to create overloads on that side only, while leaving the right winger completely isolated to do whatever he wants to do. That leaves Joe. I was about to say Josie out there. My goodness, that leaves Big Pat over there to be in a little bit of an interesting role, where at times he's holding the ball up, at times he's trying to run in behind, and then at times he's trying to receive the ball in a half space, turn and move. It's I don't see at least in the national team setup. And again, we need to put an asterisk on this, right? That we've seen him against Trinidad, Haiti, and Saudi Arabia. We haven't seen him against a ton of the bigger ones in the Gold Cup, at least. But when he does, the best way to get something out of him, pure and simply, is to let him be a big hold-up player, right? Go a bit more direct, or work the ball through the lines, finding it into his feet so that he can lay it back to you, right? The issue that I see that comes with him is when he is trying to spend too much time on the ball. Again, at least from the national team setup, right? When he receives the ball with his back to goal, tries to turn and take a player and dribble it 30 yards into the goal, that's not his strength, right? When he is given a ball through on goal that isn't a one-touch finish, that involves him to receive the ball and take a player 1v1, that's not his strength, right? But if you can get him in a position where you've possessed the ball to the point where his hold-up play isn't necessarily at the midfield line, but at the top of the 18, you're going to get a lot of good things out of him. He is such a monster to deal with. Or if your game plan is, let's just be as direct as possible, let's find him early and then run off of him in transition, I think he succeeds in that as well, because again, he will win that ball 7 out of 10 times. And if you got the right players running in behind him, all it takes is one pass to unlock the back line, and now you're in on goal with your more, for lack of a better term, technically skilled players, right? So it's going to be a very, very interesting to see how Derby use him, because obviously they did just survive relegation last year. So are they going to try to be a team that just survives again, where that direct play is going to come in, usually as you see closer to the bottom of the table? Then maybe you see a lot of really good out of him. Are you going to use him as a second striker to run in behind from possession through the middle third? I don't know if that's the best way to get out of him, but it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with Andrew on all of that. I think Charlotte does something very similar. The hold-up play is definitely good, but also, like you said, on those through balls and those runs, that's where Patrick does his most dangerous work. The turning and going, that's still where he needs to improve, and that's if he can tighten that up, then he'll be super dangerous.
Yeah, and that's interesting from a Derby perspective, hearing you guys talk about that, because just yesterday, Derby confirmed the signing of, at the time of recording yesterday, confirmed the signing of Luton Town striker Carlton Morris. He had a relegation clause in his contract, so he's joined up with Derby. We also have a big Norwegian forward in Lars Jorgen Salvesen as well. So, it'll be interesting to see how manager John Eustace kind of utilizes him, because I think he's trying to go now for the big profile kind of striker. They're all very tall, they're all very physical presences, and as should Agyemang sign, it will be very interesting, because that is definitely like Eustace will want to do this, want to attack the ball this way, maybe not be direct, but he wants to put crosses in the box, get the fullbacks going down, pumping balls from midfield and different angles and things like that. So it is an interesting profile, the way that our, forward line is shaping up. Last year we had Jerry Yates. Jerry Yates, fantastic, but he's not the biggest, most physical presence. He's more making darting runs and, trying to bring other people into play. So it's really interesting that, you talk about his physicality, you talk about his height, you talk about his strength, because those are the attributes of the other forwards that we're bringing in, that we either have on the books or we've brought in already. So it'll be interesting to see how John Eustace continues to evolve that forward line, because Derby struggled in front of goal last year, and sometimes we needed a little bit extra. So hopefully this provides that push. Nick, I'm going to come to you, and then Andrew as well. You've talked about this in fits and starts, but forgive me, because it's a little bit late when we're recording this. It's been a long day. My brain's a little frazzled. Talk to me again about the strengths of Patrick Agyemang. Where does he really excel? What elements to his game make him a top quality player?
Well, I think, like we were mentioning earlier about playing direct and using him as that hold up person, that's where his strength is now, that we're seeing, because of, like we were saying before, his physical capabilities, his quick first step to get in and body someone, to be able to have that advantage, even if it's like an even ball or something like that. He can use that to his strength. And then I also think he does have a nice shot. Like he can really drill the ball and find the spots. It's not someone who's taking like a direct kick, but it's someone that can find the holes and find the spaces, given that one-on-one or that area. So yeah, I think also I wanted to add something. It's kind of, I don't know if I'm jinxing anything or not, but he's kind of got the Ram in his blood. So he went to Rhode Island. They were the Rams, the college, and now he's at Charlotte. If people don't know, Dean Smith is of course the coach part, but there's a basketball coach that coached at the University of North Carolina, and North Carolina was the Tar Heels, and their mascot was a ram. So everybody's kind of associating that. And now we're talking about maybe him going to the Rams in Derby. So interesting thing there too.
Very much written in the stars.
I love that. That's awesome. Outside of the stuff that we talked about, right? The physicality and the speed and the pure athleticism. One of the things that always impresses me is his work rate, right? So for whatever reason, I end up watching. So as you can see, I'm a Red Bull supporter. Got all my Red Bull stuff over there. I end up watching Charlotte Red Bull live more than any other matchup. And I go to every Hudson River Derby too. But for whatever reason, every game I go to, I can get to Charlotte versus Red Bull. So I've seen him go up against Red Bull center backs who are just basically the center back version of him. Not the best on the ball, but they are big, they're strong, they're athletic, and they deal with it. And he went up against a guy called Andres Reyes last year, and they were playing a lot more direct than they were this year. And he battled and fought and ran and hit and for 90 minutes and didn't give up a single opportunity. He kept fighting. So his work rate and his work ethic is something that you're going to see come in at Derby, where no matter how far down he is on the pecking order, no matter how many chances or lack thereof he gets, he will go out there and he will give you everything that you ask of him for as long as he's out there, to show you that he belongs there. It's the mental side of his game is also super, super strong.
Yeah, it's good to know, because last season when the managerial change came, Andrew and Nick, the John Eustace kind of switched the narrative. We went from kind of being victims under Paul Warren, and he had this famous quote last year, John Eustace, where he said, "We're fighters, we're not victims," and it kind of flipped the mentality of that squad. And he wants to build them an image. He wants them to graft. He wants them to be hardworking. He wants them to leave everything out on the field. So it's good to see that he's got those attributes as well, because that's going to fit very well into the way we do business. Nick, what are the weaknesses? Where can this player, what's Patrick Agyemang not very good at? Well, I mean, he's probably better than all three of us. No disrespects to you guys. I've never been on the same pitch as you. He's certainly better than me. Where are the weaknesses in his games? Where can he improve in order to take that next level? Agyemang's news broke about him coming potentially to the championship, potentially to Derby County. What did you make of it when it all broke? Was it something that was expected? Was it like an expected thing, or was it kind of out of the blue? Like, okay, thought we'd have him for at least the end of the MLS season, and then he'd go in January, or is it just kind of the timer?
I think everybody had on their little bingo card, as we call it, Pat, possibly going somewhere in the summer. That's why you probably seen for Charlotte, there's another player, Idan Toklamati, who's kind of been getting some time and doing some things in that same position. And they were actually, there were some games that Pat didn't even start because of different things, and maybe just trying to get him to see kind of what was going on out there. But yeah, I don't think anybody was surprised, especially with his work and his ability to, even though, like you said, all the haters and things like that are happening with the national team, he's still getting some results there. He's getting some goals, and he's getting noticed. If they're talking about you, you must be doing something. So I think it was not a surprise for Charlotte fans. I think it was just more win. So.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, gents, while we've been having this conversation, is I was thinking about kind of my final question and how I would phrase this. And Andrew, is Patrick Agyemang up for a move to the championship? Is that a level that's good for him to continue his development? Is that a level that he can be successful at? And before I let you answer, Dean Smith is his manager. Dean Smith has coached at the highest levels in England. He works with this player on a daily basis. I would assume that he has some sort of you would assume he has some sort of relationship, right? Some sort of mutual respect, player and coach. And that if this move came in and he wasn't ready for it, you would assume he would go to him and say, hey, look, this might not be the great move for you going into a World Cup year if you're trying to have aspirations at the national team. One would hope that, they would have that sort of kind of honest conversation. Andrew, because you watch both leagues greatly, is this a step too far for him, or is this a good learning platform going into place in games? Obviously, Haji Wright plays in the championship at Coventry. Josh Sargent plays in the championship at Norwich. Is he sitting there saying, I can go here, if I knock in 5 or 6 goals, that's going to solidify my spot for the World Cup. If I work hard and do my thing, I can get in Maurizio Pochettino and solidify my spot. I would say on the plane to the United States, but we're hosting it. So in that United States roster for the World Cup.
So I don't think that the championship is a step too far for him. I think the physicality of the league. I mean, we talk about it a lot, how MLS and championship are comparable in physicality and strength and that sort of style of play. My concern is Derby the right spot for him? You mentioned that they're already bringing in 3 very similar, or 2 to 3 very similar strikers already to his play style, who are used to the environment, who are used to the league, the setup, all of it. Where now he has to go get new area, he has to go get used to a new coaching style, new scheme, and then try and work his way over those 2 players. I'm not sure, like you mentioned, going into the 2026 World Cup, that's the right move right now. Now, when Tom Bogert tweeted that other teams were in there, he didn't mention who they were, but I have heard that there's one from Belgium. It might be Ghent or Genk, one of the 2. And I don't know anything about those 2 teams, to be completely frank. However, is that a better setup for him? Where is the depth chart there? I couldnn't tell you, like I said, I don't know much about them, but just speaking to you now, where you're telling me that you've got all these other players that he's going to have to jump if he wants to make the World Cup. Is this the right move right now? I'm not sure it is. Is it the right move for his long-term development? I mean, what is he? Come 29, 30, he'll be 28 years old. Is this the right move for 2030? Maybe, and that's okay, right? It doesn't have to be for tomorrow. It can be long term, but it all depends on what he wants, and also it depends on the money, right? If Derby are going to shell out 8 mil plus add-ons, or another team's going to drop 8 figures on this guy, Charlotte's not turning that down. I promise you they're not, and it's going to come with a nice pay raise. I'm absolutely positive of it. So, it may suck to miss it at home, but for the long term, maybe that's the answer.
And Andrew, you raised a good point there. And Nick, I'll let you have the final word. But the MLS salary data was released this week because MLS publicly released their salary information. and Patrick Agyemang was on about $2,000 a week. So he's got £2,000 a week, $2,000 a week. So he's going to get a lavish pay rise when he comes to Derby. So Nick, final thoughts. Similar question to Andrew. Do you think he's capable of making this step up? And do you think do you think he can be a success in England in the second tier?
Yeah, definitely. I have no doubts that he could be a success there. He learns wherever he goes, he grows. And, I think you can throw age out just because it's kind of the late start, but don't worry about his age. Like, he's growing as a player. And just because he might be, 4 years in and 28 at the next World Cup or something like that, doesn't mean we need to think of him as like our typical 28-year-old and kind of like on the other end. He could just be kind of still on that rise. So I would say that. As far as what I think Derby's doing, I think Derby is hedging their bets here because they don't know if they're going to get him. And so they're like, let's bring in the other players. If this is the style that we want to have, let's see who we can get. And now we have maybe two beasts that we can throw out there. Maybe one of them earns the starting one and the other one comes in and cleans up because they're the super sub and the team has been worn out. Now you got somebody else that's fresh that you have to manage. So I think they're just looking at it as a bigger picture and like, okay, this is style we want to do, and let's get some players who can do it. And if we can't get him, we got somebody else.
Yep, 100% agree. I think, you can always ride the hot hand. You always have the option as well. If injuries strike or lack of form strikes, you don't have to change your style of play if you have similar players that you can just plug and play if they're more or less the exact same type of player. And you're going to get a player, hopefully, if he comes to Derby, that's going to be highly motivated to do well because it is a World Cup year. And in addition to it being a World Cup year, his country is hosting the World Cup. So in order to play in a World Cup in front of your own fans is a once in a generation, less than that experience. And so he's going to be highly motivated if he comes to try to get that thing. He's going to have great people around him. In terms of Derby, a very family oriented club. You've got Carlton Morris, who knows the league, who we can learn off of. He's 4 or 5 years as senior. Lars Jorgen Salvesen, different kind of style, very similar style of play, adjusting to that, bringing that experience from Norway as well. So it'll certainly be interesting and certainly one to watch. I'm rather excited about it, to be fair. I'd heard some rumors because Andrew tweets about him a lot on his page, and I was like, oh, who is this guy? He looks kind of good. And then the guru of all transfers, Fabrizio Romano, said it was happening, so it must be. But if Tom Bogert is saying potentially it's not happening, who do I believe? Because Stephen Goff is also saying something completely different. There's just so much going on. Nick Finelli from the Charlotte FC podcast and Andrew Barnacle from the Designated Players podcast. Nick, Andrew, thank you for your time this evening. I greatly appreciate it. And I'm always appreciative of the chatter. And thank you for the insights on Patrick. On Big Pat. I forgot his name there. I forgot his last name. But guys, Agyemang, thank you very much. Geez, it's been a long day. Thanks, guys. That's all we've got time for today. We'll be back with more transfers, so make sure you subscribe. Until then, the only last thing to say is up the Rams.